into the sea, mountains into the sea.
Welcome to the Our State Book Club podcast. I'm your host, Wiley Cash. In this episode, we talk with Lee Smith, author of Guests on Earth, about her connections to Asheville's Highland Hospital and how it inspired her to write a book she always knew she would write.
Mountains in the sea.
Lee, thank you for joining us again.
Thank you, Wiley.
So, Guest on Earth is the May selection of the Our State Book Club, and it is such a gorgeously written book. It's about a young girl who enters Highland Hospital at a very young age, and her name is Evelina Toussaint from New Orleans. And I am wondering how you settled on Evelina as the novel's narrator.
Well, what I was looking for, I am most comfortable writing from one person's point of view, and I was trying to think of a character who would be present at the hospital and during all the things that I knew I wanted to write and I knew I wanted to put in, you know, even though I knew that Zelda Fitzgerald would be a major character and I knew other things that were going to be happening because I was really looking into psychiatry as it existed at that time and so on. And so I wanted this one character to be present throughout. And so I decided she should be a patient and then become a part of the hospital, something like that. And there's a lot of music I knew would be important throughout. And so I decided maybe she could be linked. She could be the accompanist for a number of the kinds of shows that they really did put on at that hospital and the musical events that happened there. And so gradually she came into my mind, you know, as to who she would be. And that I needed her as to take us through those years in the hospital.
And it's interesting that you mentioned her as an accompanist on the piano. Accompanist on the piano, because I felt like reading the novel, which I read again recently, that Evelina is someone who doesn't always recognize her own power, her own talent, her own presence. And she is surrounded by these huge personalities, Zelda being perhaps the biggest.
Absolutely.
So can you tell us about Zelda Fitzgerald and your early fascination with her, and even before your experiences with Highland, perhaps with your son, but...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, I have always, my whole life, been completely fascinated by Zelda Fitzgerald. When we get done talking here, I'm going to take you out here to my little writing house, which is filled with books about Zelda and Zelda memorabilia and all kinds of things. I have just been totally interested in her forever, ever. And her art, which is incredible, and people don't even seem to understand. And those giant paper dolls. That she made. I mean, I've been to her, I've been to her home. I've been when they were unpacking this big trunk with some of those giant, ones that had been lost and so on. I mean, I'm just a Zelda nut and have been forever, ever.
How did that happen?
I don't know. I was always also in love with Scott Fitzgerald, with his work. And then when I first read Zelda, Save Me the Waltz, something just happened, and I don't know. I think she's my other self or something, because I've always been sort of dutiful.
Yeah, like you've been an Evelina, maybe.
Like Evelina, right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So you were drawn to write this novel not only because of your interest in Zelda, but also because of your personal connection to Highland Hospital in Asheville. Do you mind talking about your family's history?
No, I don't at all. No. My family has had a huge connection. My father suffered from a number of nervous breakdowns, as they were called at the time, and he was hospitalized several different times at Highland for, months at a time, long periods of time. And so he was also hospitalized at other hospitals, including one in Connecticut, including UVA, etc. So, but anyway, he was there at Highland Hospital, and I remember us going up to see him, up to visit, and I got to have a new dress because there was going to be a dance, and all of the families that were visiting the parents, and all the townspeople who came. This was quite a place.
Yeah.
It was quite a hospital. And all the townspeople that came, everybody would dress up. And so I had a new dress to go, and everybody danced with me. I was like 11. And, it was just 12, maybe 10. But anyway, I just remember dancing, and my dress would go out on the turns, dancing with my father at the mental hospital. And he was all dressed up, and so were all the other patients. The live band, and a number of the patients played music. It was an incredible scene. So I didn't make anything much up ever. And this was something that the doctor who was the head of the hospital thought was important, and he was very innovative in this. It was like music therapy. It was like dance therapy. Everybody had to walk miles every day, and they had to grow vegetables, and they did this and they did that. And this was all radical at that time. Of course, we didn't know that at the time, but it was a very, very interesting.
In the novel,
hospital.
they're going hiking, they're doing art, they're horticulture, they're having these dances, they're playing music.
That was brand new.
Doing plays.
He made that up.
That's
it was
amazing.
totally brand new. People did not have those kinds of art therapy and so on in other hospitals.
How had the hospital changed by the time your son was a patient?
Well, it was just like a completely modern hospital, but they still believed in the arts and believed in music. And there was all sorts of arts therapy, all sorts of, that. And my son was a great piano player, actually. And he was always playing for these various events. When he was at Highland Hospital, then he got well enough to be an outpatient, and he was playing jazz all around Asheville. And also taking some classes at UNC Asheville. I remember he took creative writing and so on. So he had a long history there, and I was always up there when he was there. So I felt like it's a place that I really, really knew. And he would be like in the hospital, and then when he was well enough, he'd be outpatient and so on. But he was up there for about 4 years. And so while I was there, I just became totally fascinated with all the other patients that had been there, and with, talking to people about them, and particularly about Zelda, because I've always loved Zelda, and about her record when she was there. And of course, she had died in the horrible fire that killed 9 women, and was, some people believed, set, and so on. And so there was the great mystery of that. And so I was just completely, interested in the hospital, and always knew a lot of people who'd been patients and who were staff and so on. And I was there for years. And I can tell you exactly the moment when I knew I was going to write this book. By then, I already had like a huge collection of everything in the world about Zelda, because the whole thing interested me, obviously. But the moment I knew I was going to write this book was one time when Josh was living. He wasn't living on campus, but he was still affiliated with the hospital and went to groups there and everything. He was playing jazz around in Asheville, and went to see Josh. And we were walking up Zillico, I can't remember which street it was, toward the hospital, and just at sunset, and there was this brilliant sunset right behind those buildings. It looked like a castle, of Highland Hospital, and the sun was just completely red like that, and it was like it was burning, the hospital building that was there. And all of a sudden I just thought of that terrible fire that had killed Zelda, and the other women. And I just thought, oh, I need to write about this. I'm going to write about this. Wow. And it was just like, okay, this is my book. I'm going to do this. And I already had so much stuff. Yeah. But because it was my life. It was, it was my whole family where they were. So.
Well, given how much you knew about the hospital, was there anything when you were writing the book that was new or that surprised you about the hospital or about the hospital's history?
Oh yeah, there were so many things, and one thing that happened. I was doing so much research on the hospital and getting as many records and calendars of the daily life of people and everything, And then I found out that actually when the hospital was sold finally, Duke had taken it over, and all of the records were, guess what, in a warehouse 10 miles from where I live here.
Oh, wow.
In Durham. So I could just go over there and whoopee, it was just great. I couldn't believe it. So that was very helpful.
Seems like it was meant to be, the book you were supposed to write. We're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back with Lee Smith. Because we're coming to you from Hillsborough, North Carolina, it seems fitting to celebrate the incredible literary legacy of this small North Carolina town. Allen Gurganus, known for novels like The Oldest Living Confederate Widow Tells All, lives just across the street from Lee. And the late Randall Keenan, author of A Visitation of Spirits, was a dear friend who also lived nearby. The town also boasts citizens like Frances Mays and Jill McCorkle. You can find their work at bookstores across North Carolina, including Purple Crow Books, right here in downtown Hillsboro. This podcast is produced by Our State Magazine, celebrating North Carolina travel, food, history, and culture since 1933. Check out ourstate.com, where you can explore exclusive content like digital stories, YouTube videos, newsletters, and more. To have each month's issue delivered to your mailbox, visit ourstate.com/subscribe and enter promo code BOOKCLUB, one word, BOOKCLUB. That's BOOKCLUB for $5 off any regular or gift subscription. We're back with Lee Smith. Lee, I want to talk to you about your most recent novel, Silver Alert. Can you tell us that story of where the idea came from?
Absolutely. Yes. Well, my husband and I have gone to Key West many, many times. It's a place that my parents took me a lot, and I've always loved it. And we have often worked with writing workshops down there too. But so we were on our way driving home from Key West, and this was maybe 6 or 7 years ago, and we saw this big banner, electronic banner that flashed across the highway, Route 1, the fabled Route 1, and it said, Silver Alert, and then it had the make and model of a certain car, and then it said, you were supposed to call such and such, and we couldn't figure out what it was. And we said, well, what is that? We didn't know. We'd never seen one. And then we go on up the highway, up Route 1, a little bit longer, and it says Silver Alert. And it has the make and model of the same car. And it says, call such and such. And Hal said, he said, I bet it's like Amber Alert, which is what they put up when a child goes missing. But hey, we're in Florida, right? Geezers. We're in Florida. Silver Alert, that's hair. This means old people alert. Okay, so somebody's got the keys to his car, and he's taken off. Oh, wow. And then Hal's thinking, you go, guy. So that by the next time, we see the Silver Alert thing, we're thinking, yeah. And then by the third time, we have already created a companion for him. Mm-hmm. We think he's got somebody along for the ride, and it's the mani-pedi girl from Assisted Living, and they are booking. So that's where the idea came from.
And that is such a funny story, and the novel itself has so many funny moments, but like all of your books that resonate so deeply with me, we talked about Blue Marlin a little bit earlier. You are so talented, Lee, at holding comedy and tragedy so closely together.
Well, they are very closely linked.
Indeed, but especially in Silver Alert, there's I don't see aging as a tragedy, but I see certain things that potentially await some of us, aging, maybe memory loss, dementia, those kinds of things, as being tragic. But as someone who grew up with a grandmother in my house who was struggling with dementia, it can also be quite hilarious.
Oh, absolutely.
So how do you hold those things in your work, comedy and tragedy? How do you hold them so closely together?
They are knit together. I mean, they are just, they're just halves of the same thing.
Yeah.
Which is life.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think you have to recognize both of them, I think.
And I think it's also true, whether it's in your work or anybody else's, and these literary things, we're trying to always swing through two emotions. We're never trying to bear down, because that's, I tell my students at UNC Asheville, that's called melodrama. When you bear down on one emotion, we've got to swing through as many emotions as we can. And that's something that I've always just so appreciated about your work, is your willingness to really make us laugh through our tears.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
So we are going to close out with another lightning round. And I want you to give the first answer that comes to mind.
Oh, my. Okay.
All right, here we go. And you do not have to mention anyone living here so that all of our friends don't get their feelings hurt. But who is a North Carolina author who's meant a particular amount of, meant a lot to you, I should say. A North Carolina author who's meant a lot to you over your career.
Elizabeth Spencer is certainly one. And she was, of course, from Mississippi originally, but ended up, living in North Carolina. And her work and her example, I think, meant a great deal to me.
Oh my gosh, some of her early short stories. I know
her short stories are beautiful.
A Southern Woman got re-released a couple of years ago, and some of those early stories are so razor sharp and dark, and I don't know, just ahead of their time in so many ways.
Oh yeah,
structurally,
just the craft. And I, had the great privilege of getting to know her really well here, and that that was just wonderful. So.
Another question. Barbecue or fried chicken?
Barbecue.
Oh, that was a quick answer. And here's a question you might want to think about for a little bit. What do you love most about Hillsborough?
I think it's the people. It's really the people. I mean, it's a wonderful town. It looks wonderful, and there's all this history and so on. But for some reason, it has collected the most eclectic and unusual group of people. It's always, I think, collected people who are dreamers. It's a kind of there's lots of trees. It's been quiet. It's a kind of been sort of out of the way. Now we've been discovered a little bit more, but it's a town where there are a lot of dreamers, a lot of talkers, a lot of very sociable and interesting kinds of people interested in history too, and it's just a fine place to live. It really is.
Well, thank you so much for being with us in your home in Hillsborough today, Lee. I really appreciate it. This episode was recorded and produced by Hunter Brady. Our theme music is by Wilmington, North Carolina's Beta Radio. Wiley Cash's wardrobe provided by Gentleman's Corner with locations in Wilmington, Cary, and Pinehurst.
What might it be like underneath the sunrise in a state of flight? Coming back on me, it seems wonderful, the wandering mountain birds on a beach. Never moments ever wasted, turning away from your love. Honeybees, gardens of sweeter fruit never tasted, no turning to other things. Will you be, will you seem? Sweeter fruit never tasted, don't turn your back on me. Mountains pushing into the sea. Mountains